Most people think abandoned places are empty, but in several documented cases, the people who walked inside weren't alone. And the strangest part is, the evidence suggests whatever there wasn't hiding from the myth, was watching them first. There's one detail about these cases that rarely gets mentioned publicly. In all three, completely different locations, different people, different time. Each person described the exact same feeling within minutes of entering. Not fear, not danger, something else. A quiet, creeping certainty that they had already been noticed. It doesn't make sense at first, but as you go deeper into these stories, that detail starts to matter more than anything else. Because these weren't thrill seekers chasing ghosts. These were normal people photographers, urban explorers, and in one case, a maintenance worker who went into abandoned places expecting silence, and walked out questioning something much harder to explain. And once you hear what they experienced, it becomes difficult to look at empty buildings the same way again. The first story comes from a place that wasn't always abandoned. It used to be a long-term care facility just outside a quiet Midwestern town. The building had been shut down for years after a series of complaints, most of them dismissed at the time as exaggerations or misunderstandings. By the time anyone took them seriously, the facility was already closed. Daniel was a freelance photographer. He specialized in documenting forgotten places, factories, hospitals, schools. He wasn't looking for anything unusual. Who's text her history, and the kind of stillness you can't find anywhere else. He got permission through a local contact to enter the facility for a day. It was supposed to be straightforward. A few hours inside, take some shots, leave before sunset. The moment he stepped through the main entrance, he noticed something small but unsettling. The air inside wasn't stale the way abandoned buildings usually are. It felt circulated, like the space hadn't been completely sealed off from time. He told himself it was probably ventilation or gaps in the structure. Old buildings do that. They breathe in strange ways. But as he moved deeper inside, that explanation stopped feeling enough. The hallways were narrow, lined with patient rooms. Most of the doors were open, revealing empty beds and peeling paint. Nothing unusual, nothing staged, just decay. Then he reached a section where every door was closed. Not just close-latched. He paused there longer than he expected. It didn't make sense. If the building had been abandoned quickly, maybe. But records showed it had been cleared out gradually. Staff had time to empty rooms, remove equipment. Why close every door in this section? The room was empty, except for a single chair placed in the corner, facing the wall. That's when he felt it for the first time. Not fear, not panic, just the unmistakable sensation that someone else was aware of him being there. He turned around quickly, expecting maybe another explorer had entered. But the hallway was still. He told himself it was just the silence playing tricks on him. That happens in places like this. Your brain fills in gaps when there's too little input. Still, he started working faster. A few rooms later, he noticed something else. The doors behind him weren't in the same positions anymore. One of them, the one he clearly remembered leaving open, was now slightly closed. Not fully shut, just enough to change the angle. He stood there, starting at it, trying to replay his own memory. Maybe, aided in, to open it all the way. Maybe it shifted on its own. But deep down, he knew what he had done, and this didn't match. That's when the feeling changed. It wasn't just that he had been noticed. It felt like something was adjusting itself in response to him. If you enjoy real-life horror deep dives like this, make sure you resubscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because this next part is where things stop feeling explainable. Daniel decided to leave. Not run, just walk out, calmly. He packed his equipment and headed back toward the main entrance. Halfway there, he heard a sound. A chair scraping across the floor. It came from behind one of the closed doors. He froze. Every logical explanation ran through his mind. Animals, structural shifts, even someone else inside. But the sound didn't repeat. It didn't need to, because when he turned to look down the hallway, every single door was now open. Exactly the same distance, as if they had been adjusted to match. He left immediately after that. Later, reviewing his photos, he found something he hadn't noticed while shooting. In several images, deep in the background of the hallway, there was a dark shape partially visible in the reflection of a window. It wasn't clear enough to identify, but it was positioned differently in each frame, as if it had been moving. The second story is different. Not a medical facility, not a place tied to tragedy yet, at least not officially. It was an abandoned school in a rural part of Canada, closed due to declining enrollment. Megan and her brother went there one afternoon during a road trip. They had seen it from the highway, sitting isolated, surrounded by trees. They weren't looking for anything unusual, just curious. Inside, the building was exactly what you'd expect. Desks, chalkboards, scattered papers. It felt frozen in time more than anything else. At first, they laughed about it, took pictures, walked through classrooms, made jokes about how quiet it was. Then Megan noticed something that shifted the tone completely. On one of the chalkboards, there was writing. Not old writing, not faded, fresh. A single sentence. "You came back." She called her brother over. He immediately assumed someone else had been there recently. But there were no footprints in the dust, no signs of recent activity. And more importantly, neither of them had ever been there before. Before we get into the final case, remember this: Megan and her brother still swear that classroom reflection was real. The empty desk they photographed inside that abandoned Canadian school wasn't empty when they checked the image later that night. And strangely, that wasn't even the part that disturbed investigators the most. Because what happened in the next abandoned location followed the exact same pattern. The same feeling of being recognized before being seen. They both clearly remembered leaving it open when they entered. Her brother tried to laugh it off, said maybe the wind moved it. But there was no wind, and the door was on the house closed. It was locked from the inside. That shouldn't have been possible. They eventually found another way out through a side entrance. Neither of them spoke much during the drive afterward. Later that night, Megan checked the photos on her phone. One image stood out. A classroom shot, empty desks, chalkboard, sunlight coming through the window. And in the reflection of the glass cabinet at the back of the room, there was someone sitting at one of the desks, head down. Still, not visible anywhere else in the frame. Just in the reflection. If you've ever explored a place like this or even thought about it, send this to someone who would go with you. Because what happened in the third case makes the others feel almost explainable. The final story involves a man named Eric, who worked for a company hired to inspect and secure abandoned industrial sites. This wasn't exploration for fun. It was routine work. Check structures, document hazards, make sure no one was living inside. He had done this dozens of times before. The site was an old manufacturing plant, massive, mostly empty, with long corridors and large open rooms. At first, everything was normal, until he reached the lower level. That's where he noticed something unusual. The lights were on. Not all of them, just a few, spaced out, creating a path deeper into the building. That alone was strange. The power was supposed to be cut. He reported it to his supervisor, who told him to continue the inspection, but stay alert. As he followed the lit path, he started to feel that same sensation described in the other cases. Not fear, recognition. Like something already knew he was there. Then he saw it at the far end of the corridor, just at the edge of visibility. A person, standing still, facing him. Eric called out, identifying himself, asking if they needed help. No response. The figure didn't move. He approached slowly, keeping his voice calm. And as he got closer, he realized something that made him stop completely. The figure wasn't breathing. No movement in the chest. No shifting weight. It was just standing there, perfectly still. Then the lights went out. All of them. At once, the corridor dropped into complete darkness. Eric said he didn't panic. Not immediately. He reached for his flashlight, turned it on, and pointed it forward. The corridor was empty. The figure was gone. No sound of footsteps. No doors opening. Nothing. Just gone. He left the building after that. But the part that stayed with him wasn't the figure. It was what he found later in the inspection report logs. Previous teams had documented the same thing. Lights turning on. A figure at the end of the corridor, always standing still, always in the same place. But here's the detail that ties all three stories together. In each case, the people involved described the exact same thought, at the exact same moment. Not something they said out loud, something they felt. A quiet realization that didn't make sense at the time, but becomes harder to ignore once you hear it repeated. They all felt like they weren't discovering something abandoned. They felt like they had returned to something that had been waiting, and that raises a question that doesn't have a comfortable answer. What if these places aren't empty? Not in the way we understand emptiness. Not physically occupied. Not in any way that would show up on a camera clearly enough to prove, but still present. Still aware. Still reacting. There are rational explanations, of course. Environmental factors. Psychological responses to isolation. The brain misinterpreting patterns in low stimulation environments. All of that makes sense until you start noticing how consistent the experiences are.